Wow, wow, wow. The Indiana Fever have traded NaLyssa Smith and got Sophie Cunningham in a three-way trade.
Indiana Fever made a daring move by trading for Sophie Cunningham, a player who could redefine the team's future. Is this a game-changing trade or just another failed experiment? NaLyssa Smith's departure from the team has everyone talking after she was traded to Dallas. Smith's final words to her old team have sparked major controversy. Does this pave the way for success for Indiana? And what does it imply for Caitlin Clark? And I want to say this as respectfully as I possibly can, but I think that Indiana had to kind of pay a little to get rid of NaLyssa Smith. As sad as that sounds, and boy did they pay a hefty price. After being moved to the Dallas Wings, NaLyssa Smith didn't waste any time in expressing her views, and her tenure with the Indiana Fever is now officially ended. Although most athletes maintain a professional demeanor following a trade, Smith used a different strategy. Rather than sending a polite farewell or a simple thank you note, she made a parting shot that caused fans and pundits to raise their eyebrows. Her remarks weren't merely a farewell, they were an honest declaration of how the fever had affected her and how thrilled she was to perform for a company that supports me. That one sentence ignited the internet, and it wasn't difficult to decipher what she was saying. While Smith was throwing shade on her way out, the Fever were making moves that suggested they were done waiting around for potential to turn into production. Enter Smith felt like Indiana had given up on her. She felt undervalued, ignored, and pushed aside. But was she correct, or was this just an instance of a player not living up to expectations? A player named Sophie Cunningham may be the finest thing to happen to this team in years when she moves to Indiana. Now, Sophie Cunningham is a good player. She can shoot the three. She can three. And she's pretty good on defense. She's fast. I think the Fever are looking for like the fast pace. I think bringing Sophie over is definitely going to spread the floor a lot more. However, before discussing Cunningham's influence, let's examine the precise reason why NaLyssa Smith's illness ended. For a while it appeared as though Indiana had struck gold when they selected Smith with a second overall pick in the 2022 WNBA draft. They saw her as a cornerstone player they could build around for years to come. Smith had flashes of brilliance during her rookie season, averaging 13 points and 8 rebounds per game, demonstrating that she could compete in a league full of elite talent. The issue was that it never translated into consistency, and by the time the 2024 season arrived, Smith wasn't the player Indiana had hoped she would be. Her scoring and rebounding numbers decreased, but more significantly, her overall impact on the game began to wane. She had gone from being a promising young star to a player who looked lost on the court, making a lot of defensive blunders, struggling with shot selection, and in clutch situations she was frequently on the bench rather than on the court. The truth is that Smith no longer fit. Smith considered herself a cornerstone, but the Fever was shifting, and they were looking for players who could adjust to their fast-paced, high-energy style of play. Smith, for all her talent, simply didn't fit into that vision, and that's when the trade talk started. It wasn't a matter of if Smith would be moved, it was only a question of when, and when the deal finally happened, sending Smith to Dallas and bringing Sophie Cunningham to Indiana, it became clear that the Fever weren't just looking for a fresh start, they were making a statement. Smith's reaction was immediate. She removed every mention of the Indiana Fever from her social media within minutes of the trade being announced. Then came the Instagram bio change, and then the not-so-subtle dig at her former team. For fans watching all of this unfold, there were mixed reactions. Some still believed in Smith's potential and felt Indiana gave up on her too soon. Others, they were glad to see her go, saying she wasn't the player Indiana needed. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. Smith is still young, still talented, and in the right system, she could turn things around, but Indiana didn't have the time or the patience to wait and see if that would happen, because the Fever aren't playing a long game anymore. They want to win now, and that's exactly why Sophie Cunningham's arrival is such a big deal. So in the same day as they get Natasha Howard, they get Sophie Cunningham, possibly adding 2 starters while also bringing Kelsey Mitchell back, and in year 2 of Caitlin Clark. So the Fever are title contenders right now. Cunningham adds a hard-nosed, no-nonsense, high-energy presence that not only plays the game, but also transforms a team's culture. Her three-point shooting alone makes her an immediate value, but her influence extends beyond the stats because of her toughness, ferocity, ability to get under an opponent's skin, and most importantly, her winning nature. The Fever made this trade for Caitlin Clark, which might be a game-changer. Cunningham is the kind of teammate who is going to support her no matter what, big shots, play tough defense, and give the team a much-needed edge. Let's face it, when you have a generational talent like Caitlin Clark, you don't waste time waiting for players to figure it out. Instead, you surround her with the right pieces right away. That's what this trade was all about. Cunningham is a perfect fit for the modern WNBA game. She can guard the league's best perimeter players, play multiple positions, and stretch the floor. However, Smith is still figuring out who she is in this league, which is what makes her unique. The coaching staff of the Fever saw the writing on the wall when Smith wasn't adjusting to their system, and they weren't going to force it, so they went out and got a player who fits. That's it. Now the question is what happens next for Indiana. The Fever didn't just swap players, they improved their mentality, culture, and ability to win games. Right now, Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell-Alia Boston, and Sophie Cunningham are two key players who might seriously harm Smith. We shall soon learn whether she'll flourish in her new setting or whether her difficulties will persist. But one thing is certain, Indiana is finished. She is traveling to Dallas with something to prove. Looking ahead, they are constructing for the future, and it appears much more promising with Cunningham involved now that the dust has settled, and the Fever isn't looking back. It's time to truly analyze what this move means for Clyn. This transaction wasn't just about replacing a key player, it was about altering the entire course of the organization. Let's be clear, this trade wasn't just about moving on from NaLyssa Smith, it was also about reshaping the team around their new franchise star, Caitlin Clark. Clark is the most anticipated rookie in WNBA history, and Indiana needed to make sure they were assembling a team that could complement her style, which is precisely why Sophie Cunningham's arrival changes everything. Clark is a fantastic facilitator and a floor general who can score from anywhere, but in order to reach her full potential, she needs teammates who can move without the ball, spread the floor, and play tough defense. Cunningham is a great fit in this regard. Let's start by discussing spacing. Spacing was one of the main worries about the Fever before the season started. Caitlin Clark performs best in an open court because she needs space to go around, whether she's setting up teammates or creating for herself. Alia Boston has a strong online presence and performs best in an area where she can control the paint. One of the league's top shooters, Kelsey Mitchell, meets teammates who can divert opponents from her. The issue with NaLyssa Smith was that she didn't assist with spacing. Smith's inability to consistently make outside shots made it simpler for defenses to collapse inside, which made things more difficult for Boston. She might be challenged by Clark and Mitchell defenders to shoot from mid-range or beyond, which would result in fewer driving lanes, fewer open looks, and more contested shots. That is quickly fixed by Sophie Cunningham, who has a career three-point shooting percentage of 38%. Because of this, opponents must respect her shot and cannot afford to leave her open, which, if you like the video, then give a like and subscribe to the channel. Extends the floor and provides Clark more space to work. This is a significant victory for Indiana since Cunningham lives behind the arc and doesn't just shoot threes. Defenses must remain honest, giving Clark the chance to attack the rim so Boston can work inside and Mitchell can have a cleaner look. Exactly what the Fever needed. Now, let's discuss defense. Another difficulty Indiana had with Smith was that she struggled defensively. She wasn't powerful enough to control the paint or quick enough to transition onto guards, which is problematic in an NBA that is becoming more and more efficient every year. Cunningham is able to defend several spots and transition between smaller and larger guards. Wing's physical defense tires down opponents, and her defensive versatility is a game changer for Indiana. Consider this: while assembling a team around a superstar like Caitlin Clark, you need players who can compensate for defensive failures and cover shortcomings. Although Clark is a formidable offensive player, she will require defensive support. Cunningham gives her the edge that Indiana has been lacking by playing with intensity and not being scared to get physical. Let's now discuss another quality that Cunningham contributes to the Fever: toughness and leadership. This may be the most significant element of all. Indiana has been rebuilding for years. They have talent, but they haven't had the proper mindset. Cunningham Sophie, she demonstrates that she is a tough, direct competitor who sets the tone both on the court and in the locker room, exactly what Caitlin Clark needs. During her rookie campaign, Clark had high aspirations going into the league. Every team will target her, and she will be tested, pushed, and fouled at every game. That's what happens when you're the biggest name in the sport, and who better to support her than Cunningham? Sophie Cunningham has a reputation for defending her teammates. She is a fearless enforcer who doesn't hesitate to change things up when things get heated, which will be crucial for Caitlin Clark, since, let's face it, there will be a lot of strain on Clark. Feeling like she's carrying the entire squad on her shoulders is the last thing she needs. Cunningham will relieve some of the strain by leading fights and bringing the tough mentality that winning teams sorely need right now. Let's discuss the wider picture. Sending a message is more important than simply trading Smith for Cunningham in this transaction. Let's take a look at their current core, which includes Caitlin Clark, a generational talent, and elite playmaker. Indiana isn't just wanting to be competitive, they're aiming to win now, so they're assembling a team that plays to their strengths and maximizes their potential. Lights-out shooter Kelsey Mitchell is capable of making her own shots. Aaliyah Boston is a powerful large man who has great control. Sophie Cunningham is an emotional leader, defensive enforcer, and floor spacer. This is just the beginning of what the Fever are attempting to create. Let's take a moment to turn things around and consider what this deal means for NaLyssa Smith in Dallas. Natasha Howard is an experienced big who provides experience and toughness that makes for a frightening starting five. It is a new beginning. Smith didn't fit in Indiana. She struggled to adapt to their system, but in Dallas, she gets another chance to prove herself. Maybe that's exactly what she needs, but let's be honest, this trade was more about Indiana than it was about Smith. The Fever aren't dwelling on the past, they're focused on building the future, and with Caitlin Clark leading the way, they're making sure she has the right teammates around her. Sophie Cunningham is one of those teammates. She's not just a shooter, she's not just a defender, she's a winner, and that's exactly what Indiana needs. So when we look back at this trade in a year or two, will we say it was the move that turned the Fever into contenders? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, Indiana isn't looking back. They've made their decision, they're Allen on Caitlin Clark, and with Sophie Cunningham by her side, this team just got a whole lot tougher. So did Indiana. When this trade is Sophie Cunningham. Missing piece the Fever needed. And what does this all mean for Caitlin Clark season 1? Things for sure, this Indiana team just got a whole lot more interesting. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think NaLyssa Smith deserved more time, or did Indiana make the right move? If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, don't go anywhere, subscribe, and enable notifications so you don't miss any updates. To stay up to date on all the most recent WNBA drama, click on the next video that appears on your screen. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and subscribe my channel.